Hi, welcome to the Coffee with Lisa podcast. I believe that everyone in business has missing structures and endless possibilities to create new opportunities. The challenge is most don't know how to leverage the relationships for a win-win. I believe that your relationships will make the difference in the results you'll achieve, the impact you will have, and the speed in which you will make opportunities happen. I believe that you can see things through, but you often struggle to see through things. I'll make the invisible visible, the complex simple. Because of these beliefs, I created the Coffee with Lisa podcast and have invited the best experts to join me and share their experiences and knowledge with you so you can move faster and gain a competitive advantage in life and in business.
We are live. We dropped the link in so we can share it out too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're live now. Good morning. I have got Ryan Foland and Coach Micheal Burt here today, and we are going to talk about your message, your pitch, ditch the act. How do you become a monster producer? How do you become a person of interest? What does that look like? I'm very excited to have both gentlemen on here today. Ryan, if you want to just start it off by giving a little bit of background about who you are, and then I'll turn it over to you, Coach.
Sure. I'm a speaker, author, and ginger. Ginger is the red beard, which is getting white over the years, but I once a ginger, always a ginger. And yeah, I'm passionate about keeping things simple, and that's from the way that you put your messaging together, all the way until how you carry yourself. And for me, it's a particular interest because I sometimes get a little bit long-winded, and I'm always trying to restrain myself. I really love working with people who, when I ask them a simple question and they go on and on, it gives me a lot of things to work with to see how you can boil that down. Because there's really nothing more challenging than getting to the basics. And, I've sort of niched into helping people market themselves, traditionally known as personal branding. So it looks a little bit different for everybody. But at the end of the day, it's empowering because the more I realize the power of just being human and sharing your story is what I think really connects people. And my brand has taken off as I've become more vulnerable, as I've shown more of behind the scenes, more of the process, and less of the glitz and glamour to really just feel comfortable not having a highlight REEL, but having a highlight REAL, and it's just constantly evolving. So I'm enjoying the work that I'm doing, and I love being, I'd say, like a little bit of tough love, as you experienced, Lisa. I like to be tough with people, but it's all out of love to see if we can keep things simple.
Coach, I know you share much of that philosophy.
Yeah, I do share a lot of that philosophy. And, when I wrote the book, Person of Interest, that was kind of the concept of you becoming, right, like the go-to player in your space. And I believe people of interest take complicated things and make them simple. To Ryan's point, I believe they are very clear in what they believe. I believe they're very clear in how they articulate what they believe. And I believe you can quickly discern if they're a person that you want to do business with or not, which is, why we teach the explanation of services in our coaching program. I have found that many people cannot articulate what it is they believe, why they believe it, what they do, how they do it different, who they've done it for, which, leads to confusion more than anything. And confusion, in my opinion, is just randomness in motion. So we coach people, mostly business people, who want to work a system and show some type of quantifiable growth in their business. And we do that through a coaching program called Monster Producer. Now, the new thing we're doing is, after 18 years of speaking, coaching, and training and writing books, I'm now coaching other people that want to coach and want to speak. And I didn't feel comfortable doing that until I built a multi-million-dollar coaching business, and until I really had studied the game and been coached by some of the best people in the world. So we're now coaching coaches, Lisa, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited about that because at my core, I'm a coach. I mean, I'm a coach that speaks. I'm a coach that writes. I'm really a coach first, and that's my primary hard skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, all three of us can really share with the philosophy that, people we struggle ourselves to see our own big picture because we're emotionally attached to it. We live, eat, and breathe what we do. That sometimes it makes it very difficult for us to really articulate what we do or how we do it to others in a manner that's really simple and easy for them to understand, like the explanation of services or like the 313 challenge. And so I was very excited to have done the 313 challenge with Ryan and start to really deep dive down into what does that look like, as well as, I spent time with you, Coach, working through person of interest and explanation of services. And so I really want to get into that and really help people who are watching this and future people who are viewing this, what the difference is between the two and how you can really marry the two processes together in your business and to really articulate to the world who you are and what you do and what you believe. And so, Coach, let's first start out with you. Can you talk a little bit more about what is the explanation of services and why a person really needs to know what do they believe in order to have others believe your belief system and move business forward?
Well, I believe that people do business with other people that believe the same things they do.
Yeah.
Okay. And, I believe everybody needs a coach in life. I believe a good coach can change your life. I believe those that have a coach earn 3 and 4 times the amount of money than those that don't. Right. Like these are core beliefs I have. I also believe in attracting business versus chasing business. I believe in becoming the buyer versus the seller. See, I have these storehouse of beliefs. And when I lead with what I believe, then other people can make up their mind if they believe the same things I do. I believe in coming in early and staying late. Now, you may believe in showing up late and leaving early. And if you do, we'll probably have conflict with each other, right? All conflict, in my opinion, this is just from 28 years of coaching, almost all conflict comes when two people don't believe the same things.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you're selling, in my opinion, you're really just aligning yourself with other people who believe the same things you do. Okay. And people can quickly ascertain that, right? So anytime I speak or coach, I've just trained my brain to use this process. And the process is I first say what I believe, typically 3 belief statements. I then tell people why I believe that, which gives them a chance to believe it too. Like, why do I believe what I believe? Then I tell them what I do third. This is what I do. I take complicated things and I make them simple. I engage people in a set of systematic behaviors that allows them to do something tomorrow they can't do today. I then pivot to how I do it differently because I'm competing with some of the best coaches in the world. And I'm a former championship women's basketball coach. So I always bring out that I was actually a coach, for a decade of my life. I had to take people from all walks of life, all socioeconomic backgrounds. I didn't get to pick the players that I coached and kind of form this team. Then I pivot to who I've done it for, depending on the industry, and give credibility indicators. And then I ask a question, Lisa, if I could do this for you, like I've done it for these other people, what would stop us from moving forward? Or I have a sweet tea. I have a sweet tea and apple pie version because I live in Tennessee, which is Lisa, out of everything I shared with you, what piqued your interest the most? And I let people unpack what they like the most. And so this is a formula I use when I do podcasts, when I write books, when I speak. We call it the explanation of service. The EOS, and a gentleman in my coaching program, actually, that I had coached for several years, created this structure. And he gave me a lot of credit for my book, Person of Interest. He said the book, Person of Interest, Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, and the Challenger Sale were the 3 inspirations for the framework of explanation of service.
Awesome. Well, and Ryan, because I have gone through the explanation service, and this really is about, our audience and specifically about both of you really understanding the process of how the two of you work, do articulate this problem that people have. So, Ryan, let me ask you, based on what Coach is talking about, what are your 3 beliefs?
Well, number one, I believe that people don't care what you do. I believe that people care about the problem that you solve. And that's really a core baseline for this 313 method that I have. And similar to what Coach is saying, it's a framework, but it's the framework that starts the process. Or if you're along in the process, it's a framework to restart and just double check to see where you're at. I really believe that people also care about those similar beliefs, but I'll take a bit of a flip on it, and I'll say not everyone has to like you. It's almost the exact opposite. And so I feel like a lot of my clients are held back because they want to target a larger audience. They want to go big and broad and wide. And it takes so much finesse to get yourself to convince yourself that you are not for everyone. And as soon as you do, then you can start to look at those people that have those similar beliefs. So I think that's really key there. And I would say that the third belief is this concept, which is my last book, which is to ditch the act. And I think that we really have a tendency to look at other people and what other brands are doing to try to keep up with the Kardashians. And we're in this world, especially in a post-COVID-19 world, where we've reset. And the best thing you can do, the one thing that's going to get you ahead in business, is to be human. And that creates relatability. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of courage. So when I feel nervous about sharing something that's maybe personal or maybe is a challenge that I've had, that's when I know that that's the right type of things to share so that people connect. And if I were to rename that last belief of ditching the act, it's that I believe people don't really care about your story of success, but they care about how they see themselves in your story. So with Coach, building a multi-million dollar business, championship coach, all this stuff, that can be very intimidating for people. And I think sometimes we forget that not everybody has had a championship coach. Not everybody has $1 million business. But what I do like of what I've heard is that, he's a human along those ways. And he is admittedly a person that's flawed and vulnerable. And so I would only imagine that the fillings between that structure is showcasing his human side. And I think that in today's day, if you are not putting yourself as a person in front of your business, or if you have a company and you're not encouraging employees to put themselves out there as de facto brand ambassadors, you're missing a large reach to reach the right people to bring it back full circle.
Well, and Jay, here's Jay Cash has a question for the two of you. How do you keep from looking amateur when you share real aspects? So I'm going to start that with you, Ryan.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's about relatability. So you have to take this idea of weakness out. And I'll point back to people don't care about your story of success. They care about how they see themselves in your story. And so if you've only been sharing the good, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, Ryan says ditch the act. And all of a sudden you just like emotionally vomit on social media and tell everybody like how bad you're feeling. That's going to disconnect, and you can overshare a lot. But the idea and what we outline in this book is to incrementally get comfortable with letting people know who you are. Because at the end of the day, people have to get to know you to then make a decision for themselves if they want to like you. And if they like you based on actually knowing everything, not just all the glitz and glamour, then they have a choice of whether or not they're going to trust you. And if they trust you, then they can become loyal. And so I think if you really look at it from it's not about being an amateur. It's about gaining your expertise and reinforcing it. Let's look back to all the experiences that you've had, good and particularly bad. It's those bad experiences that gave you the experience of how to come through it, and you've come through on the other side. So you're not positioning yourself as an amateur. You're positioning yourself who is learning in real time. And it's so easy to pop up and be like, hey, I'm an expert in this. But you can prove to me that expertise when you show me all the things that went wrong in these 18 years to go up to it. And I love what you said, Coach. Look, it took me 18 years to stumble through and build this business to where I'm comfortable going out there. That doesn't make you look like an amateur. That gives me respect for that process. So bring people along in the process, and you can do this in lower levels. You can talk about level 1, which is silly, stupid stuff that we all do as humans. Level 2 is about challenges with relationships with people. Level 3 is something more meaty. Level 4 is stuff that you don't want to share. And the last thing I'll say is in my book, we cover what's called the exposure resume. Take everything that you have intentionally left off of your resume, and that is your exposure resume. And you take anything that you do not want to share and you put it out there, and then you share what happened, what you learned, and why you're different as a result of it. And that experience adds to your expertise.
Well, and I'd like to bring Barbara Reppert says vulnerability creates trust. We don't need trust to be vulnerable. Now, Jay is talking about real aspects, and Coach, I know that you are a very real person and you do share a lot of stories about your real experiences to build trust and be vulnerable without actually having trust on the onset. So what's your comment? Do you believe that vulnerability, you don't need trust to be vulnerable?
Well, for many years, I was a coach, and so I would not show any vulnerability, right? I mean, I thought they were paying me to tell other people what to do, and it worked because we won championships, right? But that was with kids, and kids yield to authority a lot better than adults do. And so when I started my company, for years I've been, had media coaching from some of the best people in the world. And I remember sitting in New York City once with Hank Norman and Steve Carlos from Two Market Media. And I just said, guys, what's the one thing that'll keep me from being a national thought leader, like the people I admire and respect? And they said, it's just simple. You won't be vulnerable. You won't show people the other side, Coach. They see you as a machine. And because they see you as a machine, many people will never relate to that machine. They don't get up in the morning like you do. They don't go work out like you do. They don't tackle business like you do. And at first I was not open to that. So it took me a couple of years, to be honest with you, just to be vulnerable. And, so I love the concept of ditch the act, because if you really study human nature, we all put a mask on. We all portray our best self. We all show the best resume. I like to joke when people interview for jobs, they really send their representative. They don't send their real self, right? and so over the past couple of years, I feel like, Lisa, I've really worked on that and become a lot more vulnerable. And it's worked so much better. I've been able to relate to so many more people, impact so many more audiences. And really, I'm at the point now that I just share everything, and I think to Jay's point about being an amateur, we're not looking for everybody. If you study the law of diffusion, 16% of people is what I look at. I know when I go to an audience, roughly 16% of those people could be innovators or early adopters. They may see it one time and like me and move forward. But that leaves 84% of people that may not like me and may not want to move forward. I used to feel like such a failure. I'd go in and, knock it out of the park. And I said, man, I couldn't hit it any better. And they didn't buy anything. And, and then I would leave there and I go, no. When I saw that law of diffusion, I'm looking for the 16% of people that are going to buy in quickly to me. Yeah. Okay. Then 34% are going to have to see it 3 to 7 times. Then another percentage may have to see it, and some may never buy in, no matter how good it is. And you just have to understand there is no such thing as rejection, in my opinion. Some will like what you have, some won't. So what? Just keep on moving, man. Just keep on moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'd like to, Ryan, you talked a little bit, you talk about, Coach, about sharing your story, right? And then Ryan, you elaborated on that to say, people don't buy what you do in your, your success. They buy, how do you transform them through your story? How do you become part of their story? And I think that's really important as professional speakers and authors and experts, that we sometimes lose our ability to really understand that we have to invite them into our story in order to actually move forward with them. So 313 challenge, let's talk a little bit more about that. The framework behind 313 challenge. What does that look like? I mean, I know, because clearly I went through it. And Coach, if you didn't know this, he brings up this buzzer, and every time that you do something, Ryan goes, nee. What about this girl is doing the 313 challenge. Oh my God, please don't press the buzzer, please. But anyways, let's talk a little bit more about the 313 challenge and the process, so Coach gets a better idea of what that really looks like.
Yeah. So imagine if your messaging were a series of those cascading Russian dolls, with each one individually smaller and smaller. And the idea is to take your message, the largest doll, and see if you can break it down into the smallest components so that you can go in a direction that makes sense. The 313, it stands for the result, or the deliverable. And the deliverable is your ability to explain what you do in 3 sentences, 3, in 1 sentence, 1, and in 3 words, ultimately. And it eventually became something where someone said, have you been 313'd? Has Ryan 313'd you? And it just sort of came up as this process. And it really revolves around 3 primary questions that when I say them, you're going to go, oh, I know those answers. But then when I ask you, the challenge is actually how you answer them. So the first question is, what is the problem that you solve? And it's seemingly so simple, but don't confuse simple with easy, because I really feel that people don't care what you do. They care about the problem that you solve. So if you're challenged to explain the problem without any mention of what you do, goodness gracious, it is so hard for people to communicate that. And what it does is it just locks it up. And people will name multiple problems. And I'll say, that's 3 problems. What's the biggest problem? And there's a few exercises that are built in behind each of these. So there's the problem pyramid for me to help you articulate what is the best problem and how do you relate them all. So once you figure out the problem, then I want to know what's your solution in 1 sentence. And the skinny of it is that people are not skinny when they explain their solution. I ask them what they do, what is your solution, and then they tell me how their solution works. And they go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And the main lesson is, look, if you just explain what you do and then stop talking, people will want to know how it works, and you'll be able to have a conversation. And the third element is the market, the target market. This is what we talked about earlier. Who are those first 10 people lined up? Who are the front of that distribution curve, the early adopters, the people who are going to grab it because they know it's solving a problem? And once you get those 3 sentences, using mathematics, we can squeeze it to 1 sentence. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we can use metaphor and analogy, just as I explained how the 313 is like a cascading series of Russian dolls for your core messaging. Mm-hmm. And for me in my business, it's exciting because if anybody wants to work with me, that's where it starts. Because if I know the problem you solve, your solution, and your market, and your ability to communicate that, then I know exactly how I can help you out. Yeah. And it's amazing how far along you can be in building your brand and not be able to answer those questions because they're so difficult. You just kind of think you know it, and then you just move on. But the 313 as an exercise can help expose some of the flaws in your messaging. And then that translates to flaws in your content strategy. And that translates to flaws in your outreach and how you're presenting your products and how you're presenting yourself. And so it's really the tenuate or the starting point. And then it leads to further deep dives within each of those. But it's so deceivingly simple. And I have such a fun time teasing it out of people. And it is a tough love. You're fearful of the buzzer, but it makes it real. Like what am I going to do?
So it makes it very real. So let's have a little exercise and a little fun. All right, get your buzzer ready.
Okay.
Coach, okay, ask him the first question of the 313 challenge. Let's go.
Okay, now, and I just want to give a preference here, or just a little bit of context. Can you state the problem that you solve, single problem, without any mention of what you do? So if you say, I help people or I coach people, you're going to get a buzzer. And your brain's going, I got this. Okay? 1 sentence.
Hot seat challenge.
Like, what is the problem that you solve, but don't tell me what you do. Go.
I want to say help, so I don't get the buzzer. Hold on. The problem I solve. Monetization of a message.
So to give a little more context, the problem is monetization of your message?
The problem is monetization, taking a message and monetizing that for a successful person.
Okay. Now there's obviously just different stuff that we can tweak within there, but what I'm looking for is you didn't say I help people, even though you wanted to, and it still creates a little bit of intrigue, but there's something there around the fact that if you can't translate your message or monetize your message, that could result in not launching the business that you wanted or not having the success that you need or something along those lines. Okay. So good. Passing grade on that. Now, can you tell me your solution in 1 sentence?
$1 million coaching summit that teaches people how to speak, coach, train, and lead.
Okay. It's what, but it's not how. You didn't dive into it. Like you used one breath and you finished it up. Now the question I have is, does that solution solve the problem that you stated? Like a checks and balances?
Yes.
Okay. And again, it's if you are not monetizing your message and that is your problem, then logically, here's $1 million summit that will help you solve that problem.
Yes.
And then from a target market, who are these people you want at the summit? Who are the target market? And you are not allowed to use the A word or the E word. And the A word is anyone. And the E word is everyone.
Successful entrepreneurs who have baked the cake for years and now want to sell the recipe.
Okay, I'm going to motion towards it, but not hit it, just to be nice. But it still sounded like you were going pretty wide.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
you don't want all those people. Like, you couldn't even fit all those people in a huge coliseum, let alone socially distance them appropriately.
Yep.
Right. So now you did great at packaging those three together, and I'd expect nothing less. So the next step would be, how do we combine those into one sentence? And it's really just looking at those three components. So there's actually 6 different versions.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I solve, right? The problem is this, the solution is this, and here's my market. Or for these people, here's what I do to solve their problem. So the easy way is choose an order: problem, solution, market. How would you like to order those?
Yeah.
Just randomly take.
Well, problem. I'm fine with that sequence.
Okay, so then see if you can package that in one sentence, since you have those little parts.
Can I say help or no?
Yeah. So now you're taking these 3 elements.
Buzzer once, I got it twice.
So package it into one. So this is the problem. Here's how I solve it for these people, or these people have this problem. Here's what I do to solve it. You're basically taking those 3 elements and combining them into one sentence.
Yeah. I see the problem as successful people who feel like they have a song to sing and people to sing it to, but do not know how to monetize their message through speaking, coaching, training, or leading.
And I have this seminar that will.
Yeah, and I have $1 million coaching summit that teaches these people, successful people, how to monetize their message.
Perfect. And the nice thing is you've decided on those elements, and so now you can combine those together. But it's kind of a checks and balances to where sometimes when we're explaining, we forget some of those key elements. And because there are those 3, then it packages it in. And then the final part of the process is using metaphor and analogy. So like if you or your business was a cartoon character or a type of car or a hotel or a superhero, like what is one thing that represents you? And then what is one thing that represents the industry? So like, are you the Tasmanian devil of coaching? You're like, right? It's just instantly you think about that. Or are you the Superman of monetization? Yeah. Or do you have anything? Have you used something like that accidentally, or has somebody called you the something of something?
Well, the super coach. Which is a cross between a former championship coach who has an entrepreneurial mind.
Okay, but that's just one word, right? How do we create the relation between the two? So would you be the Superman of business coaching?
Probably, yes.
Okay, and I even see behind you can't see, but it almost looks like there's a Superman coming out, right?
Yes.
So again, the idea is once you have a really core understanding of the problem you solve, your solution, and your market, then you can package that together, and then you can use that as a guide of explaining what you do in terms that people understand. So when you meet somebody who's a gearhead, you're like, hey, I'm kind of like the carburetor for your coaching, right? It's because I take the perfect mixture between. Or if you're talking with a guy who's on a sailboat, since I've been on a sailboat the last 4 days, you'd be like, look, I am the keel of your something or other. Like I'm the heavy thing that's going to sit there. Nobody's going to see me. I'm deep underwater. But if you don't have me, you're just going to drift.
It's good.
So all of the insight goes without saying. And again, you can now take this and help to look at your content strategy and your personal branding strategy, and even doing an audit to your website. Does your website articulate that problem, your solution, speak to your market? So it's really like a filtering system that is a framework to then guide your content, all while being human and sharing that human side of it, so that you're not just a robot. Because I can help you figure out what to say, but it's just as important in how you say it. And that's where a whole nother set of skills comes involved.
I want to be the trim tab on your sailboat, right? Is there a trim tab?
Not on a sailboat, but on your speedboat.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. You might be the main sheet on the sailboat, right? The thing that controls the.
There you go.
But yeah, it's a trim tab, like literally, and it just helps right the ship.
Yeah.
Because they're already, but they're going a little sideways.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, my mentor, the reason I said that is because my mentor, and I was deeply scripted by Dr. Covey, Stephen Covey. And when I met Covey for the first time. He wrote in my book, "You're a trim tab." And you know, which is a small piece, right, that turns that makes a big difference. So I framed that, and it was a nice compliment. Nobody ever said that to me, but it was a nice compliment.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, Lisa, sorry you didn't get a buzzer, but just for fun, Coach, there's a buzzer to let you know.
I knew because Coach is so refined because he is a person of interest that he probably wouldn't, but I was hoping.
Well, I'm so scripted in the way we teach the EOS. You know, I was thinking about the 3-step model that we use is when we boil that 6 steps down, we go statement of belief, example, call to action, you know, and I'm so scripted in that thinking, you know, statement of belief, this is what I believe. Here's an example of someone that we've done it for. You know, if this sounds good to you, would you like to schedule a coffee? Would you like to schedule time to talk about it? You know, that kind of thing is we take it and we just keep refining it depending on the environment you're in, whether it's a social environment, you know, formal environment, what we call referral environment, you know. So, but that exercise that you put people through really forces them to get clearer and clearer and clearer on the problem they solve. Money changes hands when problems are solved. Okay.
I like it.
Absolutely.
And one thing that sorry, Lisa, real quick. One thing I'll point out is that when you have a framework, you can apply it to different situations. So if you have a new idea or you want to launch a new service or you want to just double check a vertical that you're involved in, the exercise of just checking how you can explain it is a good indication of where you need to put the work in it. And you're not going to have a one standardized 3-1-3 that is perfect for every situation. It's your ability to think, how can I communicate this problem in a way that resonates with them? What of my services am I going to lead with so I don't overwhelm them? And how can I take it away with these clarifying questions saying, like, of what I have, like, I'm looking for the people that are interested in working with me.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, I'm going to ask you this. So you work a lot with coaches, trying to help them really build their coaching business, craft the art of coaching. How many coaches would you say struggle with the message that they're trying to portray?
Well, a lot of coaches make the same mistake I made for years, which is being a coach of everything. You know, they can coach people on time management and they can coach them on business systems and follow up and operations and sales and executive management. And I think that is a process a lot of people go through. I remember very early on in my life, I had a mentor named Joe Calloway, and Calloway wrote the book, Become a Category of One. And it had all these green apples on the front of it, right? And then it had this one red apple. And I was a young speaker, and he kept telling me, Burt, you got to pick a lane. Burt, you got to pick a lane. Of course, I didn't listen to him because I was young and dumb and overly confident. But as I've gotten older, this is a big mistake that a lot of coaches make. I think people go to coaches to solve a problem, a very specific problem. If I go to Ryan, he's solving a very specific problem for me. You follow what I'm saying? And I think the older I get, the more clear I get. And this is the problem I solve. So for, business people, I give them a growth system, right? Because most coaches have a message, but they don't know how to sell the message. Lots of people write books, but they don't know how to sell the book. A lot of people have a concept, but they don't have a machine behind it, selling it and pushing it. And so this is a big mistake I see a lot of coaches make, is they're too vague. They can coach anybody, anywhere, anytime. And it's not a true specialty. And 2, they don't really know how to sell their services, and they don't know how to articulate their message.
And you said the E word, which is one of the things, like, in that process. Tell me your target market without using the E word, everyone, or the A word, anyone. And it's so funny because I will say that and like stop and repeat it. And then someone will say, well, I'm for anybody who, or everyone. It's like,
That's right.
So important.
Yeah,
so hard though. It's hard to do, right? How do you actually help convince people? Because I have that challenge as well. Yes, you are an expert in these areas, but is that going to serve you in how you're communicating? Because people don't want a generalist; they want a specialist. How do you coach coaches to really narrow that everyone down to where they feel comfortable? Because you almost have to get them mentally prepared for that, so that they can stand behind it.
Well, I talk a lot about a primary skill. I was coached by Dan Sullivan in Strategic Coach, and he taught us unique ability. I call it primary skill. If you look at all the greats out there in the world, they started with some primary skill. Zuckerberg was a coder. You look at some, this is their primary hard skill, right? This is how they initially make a lot of money. And then they have some secondary skill. And so what I do is I kind of help coaches uncover this true unique ability they have and their true primary skill. Mine is, inner engineering people through the whole person theory, because I was a disciple through Covey. So I have a deep understanding of the body, mind, heart, and spirit, how to tap into all 4 parts of a person's nature. That was what I did for a decade with those kids, right? And that made me unique. It made me differentiated. And then I use that model every day with every person I coach, because it helps me figure out where the missing structure is. Do they like knowledge? Do they like skill? Do they like desire? Do they like confidence? And those are 4 components of a person of interest too, right? So I think what we kind of help people do is find that unique ability, find that primary skill, and then coach people in that area.
Would the two of you agree? I mean, we all work with a lot of businesses, and I specifically work with a lot of brands, personal brands. And one of the things that I think happens, like you both alluded to, is that in order to sell yourself, you need to be very specific on one very specific problem. You can actually, later as you're working with those clients, you can then help them with this, and you can help them with that, and help them with this. But if you don't be very specific to the world in a very set skill set of the problem that you solve, you will actually not get access to everything else within their network of their business and so forth moving forward in the relationship. So how does somebody who's stuck inside their business really understand what is that value point that they can give to the world, and not to everyone or anyone, but that specific avatar? How do you really know who is that avatar? Because it's one thing to be able to create the message, but if you still don't know who you're talking to, what does it matter what the message is? So Coach, I'll let you start with, how do you really understand who's that person that you're going to tailor that message for?
Ooh, I'm going to tell a story. Ryan will appreciate this because he'll get a big kick out of this. When I first left athletic coaching, I brought in a board of advisors and I hired an expensive business coach, and he was great. I remember he charged me $300 to read my book. And I said, okay. Well,
that's a great idea. I like that.
I'm like, now I see how this works, right? Like every time we interact with each other, you're going to charge me. You charge me $300 to read my book. Now, but he brought in this board of advisors, and these were big time successful people. And he said, look, you're going to have to pay back. And this was 10 or 15 years ago. He's like, you're going to pay them $1,000 per lunch. Right. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I've got these 4 people around. I'm paying them $1,000. And one of them was a very successful film director. And he sat down and he was agitated. He was just very irritated. And I'm like, this is the first time I've met this guy. And he sits down. He's like, and they go around to him talking. He's like, look, I don't even know why we're here. I don't know what we're talking. I don't know why we're even having these discussions. He's like, look, Coach, you're a former championship coach. He said, it appears to me that your $20 million idea is how do you turn managers into coaches? He said, I don't know why you're doing all this other crap. I don't know why you're doing all this other stuff. The only thing you need to be is the number one guy in the world that takes managers and teaches them how to be a coach. And that's all he said. And that has haunted me, guys, for the last 15 years, because guess what? One of our programs today is turn your managers into coaches. And let me tell you something. If I quit everything, there's enough. That could be a $20 million concept right there in online programming, right? And his point is, out of all the stuff you do, you're the most qualified to be the number one guy at this. You think like a coach. Companies need their managers to be coaches. Do you know the cost of bad managers in companies? I mean, he just hit it just like that. And so, Lisa, I think you need people in your life who will give you that brutal, honest feedback. Now, the question is, will you listen to that feedback? Because I was that young, stubborn coach, and I was like, no, I'm going to coach entrepreneurs, and I'm going to coach these people, and I'm going to do this, right? But that haunts me to this day because he gave me the feedback I probably really needed. I probably needed to go in that direction. And I wouldn't be just a little single-digit millionaire today. I'd probably be a triple-digit millionaire if I would have listened to it.
I think though, in response to that is sometimes we get a message and we're not ready to hear it. It's not, the timing is not right in our lives for that particular message.
Right.
And I know your business well. I know you really well, Coach. I think that message has haunted you only because the timing now in the world is right for you to hear it, for you to actually deploy some of that strategy and that thought process that's haunted you for so long. So I don't think that it's wrong or right. I think that's just the process that we have to go through. Right. And so, Ryan, what would be your advice then?
Well, imagine a situation where you and your army essentially has overtaken this certain hill in this area, and you take a flag and you stick it in the ground, right? This is classic, iconic. Everyone knows that you have staked your claim. But the problem that I see with people determining where that claim is that they don't want to put the one flag in the ground. They want to put a little flag over here, and then a little flag over here, and a little one over here, and then a medium-sized one over here, and they want to stand in the middle. And it's like, okay, I'm going to run over here. Oh, now that you can't defend all of those flags. So what they end up doing is holding the flag in their hand. And if you want to get coaching, if you want to have somebody help you narrow down, granted that it's the right timing and you're mentally prepared for it. If I have my flag in my hand and I say, Coach, help me out. What do you think about this? And Coach looks at me and goes, where's it planted? I can't give you any advice until you actually make some sort of a stake. And I go, okay, well, I think it's like right here. This is my market. This is what I want. And he can be like, all right, let's evaluate that. Let's research that. Let's ask your clients that. Let's do some A/B testing. Let's figure it out. Oh, you know what? It's not right. Okay, Coach, here, I'm going to move it to here. How does that look? I think that unless you actually commit for just a little bit, you'll never know if it's the right decision or not. And I think people dabble in over here, and then they get a DM from somebody who wants them to do speaker training, and then another executive coach. And I deal with this as well. I think and I can only speak for myself, what's worked is that I just continue to create content around where I stick the flags. And the content will help me to guide in that decision if I'm planting my flag in the right place. And when you create content, it allows people who don't know you to find you based on your expertise. And that's where you have inbound. And for me, I don't really have a lot of outbound. People come knocking on my door to work with me. It's because they find the content that resonates with them across different platforms.
That's good.
Okay, and real quick, it looks like we have what is the 313 again? The 313 is an exercise. It's a framework. It can be looked at as a challenge to deliver your message in a very small chunk that's not only digestible, but can be used as a compass course for content, for creation, for branding, for your positioning. The 313 stands for narrowing your message into 3 sentences: problem you solve, solution, and the market. 1 sentence combines those, and then the 3 words in its purest form is thing 1 of thing 2. And then that creates somebody to create in their own mind what you do. Because oftentimes, as you mentioned, Lisa, we're too close to it. And it's just easy for me to understand. So it's a discovery process that helps me to help the clients that I work with. And it challenges people to tease out what they're really communicating. Because you can be years into a business and still scoot around those questions and be successful. But is it really the success that you could be at if you had chosen a lane earlier?
Well, and I think too, using the explanation of service in the 313 challenge, you talked a little bit about, we're putting our mark in our sand here, and then we're putting it here. And then we have to give enough time to create content to allow us to determine whether or not we need to stay in the sand there or we need to abandon and move forward. And I think when you get to be at a certain level of business like we're at, you're always getting opportunities. We're always being forwarded with opportunities, and it's our job to determine whether or not those opportunities are valid or are they a distraction to the core of our message. And I think sometimes that gets very difficult to do. So, Coach, how do you, when you're getting opportunities thrown at you from multiple different areas, how do you determine what is the mark in the sand of an opportunity versus a distraction, that shiny object that really sends you off on a tangent and away from the core value of what you do?
Well, you've studied my disc profile. How do you think I handle that? I hire a president of the company who keeps me in the lane. The word distraction means to pull apart. And I think when you think, if you study, like I said, if you study the disc profile, my disc profile wants variety. I get bored easily. I need a big challenge. I need a big fight to be in. I need a hill to take, right? That's who I am. I'm a coach. I want to go win. I want to build. So when I get opportunity, it's very hard for me to stay focused because I'll come across one opportunity, Lisa, and I'll say, man, I really enjoy doing that. And then I'll do it. And then I go, but I really enjoy doing this. No, I really enjoy doing this. No, I really enjoy doing this. And then, so we have a filter now. And I think we're getting much better at this, just to be honest with you, because I do have a president of my company that we run ideas through. We call it the opportunity filter. And if it doesn't fit in the filter of where I'm at in my life, and sometimes I do things just for because I want to do them and I enjoy them. Like I'm going to take 20 to 30-year-olds in a few weeks at my lodge and, spend 3 days with them. And that's just part of me wanting to give back to the world, right? It doesn't fit necessarily in the model of what we're doing, but it's something I just said, man, I want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm 43 years old. It's part of my legacy of coaching. I've got this desire to help the 20 to 30-year-old because I didn't have a lot of business coaching during that period, so $500, come spend 3 days with me at the lodge. Right. But it's not something that's part of my core. We're really down to just 3 things, to be honest with you. We're down to the Monster Producer Coaching Program, which is a feeder to everything. Okay. So people come into this system and they get in that system and then they see, oh, you do a coaching summit, right? And then they see, oh, okay. So we're really rolling down to 3 things: the basic coaching program, a Monster Producer, the $1 Million Coaching Summit, which I really enjoy coaching coaches, and then the managers to coaches piece, which I think will be a separate product that we sell to corporations and companies. And we're actually trying to take me out of that equation where it's just literally a product we sell to companies based on one problem: the cost of bad managers or untrained managers. So
well, and it's interesting because you talked a little bit about, you have all these things that are going on, but if they don't follow within the core product, which I really call when I'm working with clients is the blueprint, right? Like if it's not part of the blueprint, then it's either a fill my bucket because I personally have a moral value and commitment to that, and that's what I'm going to do. And that's perfectly fine. And that's outside of the blueprint. But if it doesn't actually attach to the blueprint and create a playbook that's essential to the brand of what you do and the core of what you do, then I often tell clients don't do it because it doesn't feed into everything else that you're doing. It doesn't align with your vision and your mission. So Ryan, when you're looking at opportunities, what's your opportunity filter?
Yeah, I've got a real simple process that I use and I teach or coach, and it's 2 questions that you ask yourself. So here's a little opportunity. It says, hi, I'm an opportunity. And you ask yourself 2 questions. You say, 1, is this on brand? Yep. And 2, does this make me money? Mm-hmm. Now, you have a certain set of variables, right? You either have a situation that is off brand and doesn't make you money, and that's where you decide, I am not going to do this. If it is on brand, but you don't make money, then you really have to evaluate it. This is maybe a passion project. I'm launching a stick figure store soon that's based on profits going to charity because I love drawing stick figures. It's something I enjoy doing, but it's not core to my business. I draw all of my slides for my keynotes, and there's a brand halo, but it's for me that filter there. Now, if it makes you money and it's on brand, do it. And so I use those 2 questions as a filter. And the one caveat which makes this simple exercise complex is if you can't define your brand. And I think that's what happens. Because if I ask, is this on brand, this opportunity, the speaking event, this coffee, whatever it is, if it's not, if I can't define my brand, then I'm gonna get bad data. So if you really do stick the flag in the sand when it comes regard to your brand, you can legitimately look at opportunities and say, is this on brand or off brand? Does this make me money or not? And you'll have 3 eventual results, and you can use that as this guiding light.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I wanted to bring the 2 of you together for a cup of coffee, because I think a lot of people recognize, oh, this is going to make me money, and they run. right? And then they run and they run and they move. But the problem is they really don't know what their brand is. And I think a lot of business owners, influencers, subject matter experts, they struggle with that. And if they don't have that core brand understood, which is what we're talking about today in the 313 and the person of interest and explanation of services, it can be very easy to get distracted with making money in a revenue stream that is not on brand without even recognizing that it's not on brand. So it's really important to really understand that. Coach, do you have any additional? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, real quick to put in there. And what I'm going to get real meta here. We're talking about your brand.
Yep.
But your brand is who you are. And this chases back to what do you really enjoy doing? What are you passionate about? What is your skill set? So it's hard to define your brand, but if you're having a hard time defining your brand, you need to start to realize that your brand is who you are, something our friend Peter Gorel says all the time. And so it really makes me want to focus on myself and what I'm happy with as a core of my brand. And you can't forget the personal element. Like, I love being on a sailboat. My 10-year goal is to be giving my sort of training workshops like in the British Virgin Islands as I have a cascading set of boats, because that's what I like to do as a person. Therefore, it translates to my brand. And that's where people have a hard time with personally and professionally. But that is what is exciting to me. And it sounds like the coach to help tease people, tease out what is staring them in the face. And that's what you see in the mirror, who you are. That is your brand, and that's how you can start to make these decisions so that you're not like at work, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, good, I'm done with work. Now I can be myself. You're like, no, I am myself. I love work. This is what's happening. Sorry, I didn't want to. I just wanted to go meta on that.
And that takes work, right? And that's why we have people like you, Ryan, and of course we have Coach to help us navigate through those waters so we really can. If we are dedicated to amplifying our business and really growing it and becoming a person of interest, these are the important steps that we need to take. Coach, we talk about missing structures in business. And we talk about, you need a selling system. You need to understand the person of interest. What are some of the other missing structures that people are missing in their coaching business and in their actual businesses?
Well, to me, it's the same thing. A missing structure is a void. It's a gap. It's a hole. But we've said it multiple times. I say you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame, right? And the missing structures of businesses, to me, are real simple. The activation of prey drive, which is the activation of the drive, and I'm writing about in the new book. Then it's explanation of service. Then it's selling system or customer acquisition system. Follow-up, right? And I wrote a book on that called $1 Million Follow-Up. How you extract referrals out of your current book of business, and then how you become a person of interest. Each of these are part of a system. And I've coached billion-dollar companies that had a missing structure in one of these. Oh, we do a terrible job of follow-up. Oh, we do a terrible job of extraction of referrals. Oh, we do a terrible job of explaining our services. The reason I use this structure is because it allows me to very quickly find where they're losing money. And if you just fix one of these areas, you're going to make more money. Okay. So for me, that's the monster growth system that I coach on. And we use it every day in our system with our team. If they're not hitting their numbers or if they're not selling for some reason, we go straight to the system. And we say, where's the missing structure? Oh, you're doing a poor job explaining our services. Oh, you're doing a poor job of working the lead generation system. Oh, you're doing a poor job of follow-up. So to me, even coaches have this missing structure, right? There's a lot of coaches. That's a business. It's no different than any other business, and I can't tell you how many coaches out there don't have a selling system. They don't know how to generate leads. They don't know how to work those leads. We go 7 to 15 touches with people that indicate interest. If they buy a book, that's interest. They're a new client. If they, right? So we work that system. And I think a lot of people have a message or a concept, but they're not quite sure in how to distribute that message to the world through these business growth system that we talk about.
And I have a follow-up question for you, Coach. Sorry, Lisa, real quick. But when you were explaining that, the one thing that I couldn't help but think about was that the business, the $1 billion business to the, $10,000 coach or whatever, they can have missing systems and still operate. They can have missing systems and still year over year have earnings. And I think that's deceiving. It's like, if you look at what you're doing now, it's working because you're working it. Yeah. But is it working to how it could? And sometimes it takes somebody from outside to rattle the cages a little bit. But I just wanted to point that out. These businesses will survive,
Absolutely,
but maybe not at the level that they will. And that's where it's deceiving. Like as an executive, well, what do you mean I need to pay this? Or what do you mean we're still earning? Yeah, but you're totally missing this structure, which could cascade to that. So it's a hard thing for a business owner to invest. But when they do, people like us, we can help tease out these things that they're just not seeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you could win. You could be winning, right? But you're not winning. I mean, as a basketball coach, I was getting to the same place every year, winning 30 games and get beat by the same person. and I finally said, look, I'm going to sit down with 6 people who have won the whole thing. And within seconds of me sitting down to take them to dinner, they said, you're not doing this, and you're not doing this, and you're not doing this. I mean, it was like, it took me 7 years to have the conversation. And then when I sat down within 10 minutes, when I spent time with Paul Martinelli, who came into John Maxwell's organization and built his coaching certification to $150 million. I knew the minute I met Martinelli 10 years ago, that guy can help me, but I didn't call him for 10 years. And when I called him and spent 90 minutes with him, within 10 minutes, he told me how they were doing 150 million, literally within 10 minutes. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, like, why did I call him 10 years ago when I had that instinct that he could help me? Right? This is the problem. I mean, it's really prideful in a lot of things, but it's like, I'm winning. Why do I need a coach? I'm winning. Well, you could be like, I see people making millions of dollars. Well, you could be making 10 million more dollars if you knew how to articulate this better. I mean, so Ryan's right. It's like there's a place to go to a higher frequency. You don't need a coach because you suck. You need a coach because every major person in the world has somebody coaching them. Okay. Yeah. To find that next gear, to find that next level, to flip the switch. So that's a very good point.
Well, and I think too, you look at the most successful in the world. When you mean success as in they've got a brand and a vision and grandiose business, right? Like are creating massive impact in the world. You look at Oprah Winfrey, for instance. I mean, Oprah doesn't just have one coach. She has an advisory team of coaches, right? Because not everybody can see things exactly how you want to see through things. They can see things through, but they can't see through things. And it's really important to understand that you need a network of people to really help amplify what you currently have in your business, regardless of what vertical or avenue that you're in. So I think that's really important. So before we close the show, I just wanted to ask the two of you, if you were to give one piece of advice to somebody who was listening today about what they didn't know yesterday, what they could apply tomorrow, or what you didn't know yesterday that you're going to apply, that you've learned today that you're going to apply tomorrow, what would that be? Coach?
I think what I've taken notes on during this session is, to Ryan's point, money does change problems. Money does change hands when problems are solved. I think you need to get back and get very clear of the problem you solve in the world. The bigger the problem, the more money people will pay to solve that problem. And we call those blue marlins versus blue gills. You can fish for little blue gills or you can fish for blue marlins, right? But I think when you get clear to this specialist, the heart surgeon versus the general practitioner, that, you are the world's best in the world at solving this problem. I was writing down target markets for our 3 products. I think this has been a very helpful exercise. So Ryan, thank you for that. And I think I need to pick up a copy of your book, right?
Yeah. I've got a whole bookshelf there behind that. I'm like, I'm ready to buy all those too.
So, I think Lisa, I think these are great reminders. We get in the flow of life, and we get in the current of the urgent, I call it, and we just forget the basic things. Like, get clear on what it is you believe. Get clear on what it is you sell. Get clear on whose problem you solve. Quit the people that make the most money are specialists. They're not generalists. Okay, so I think that's my takeaway for the audience from today's show.
Okay, so pretend that I said all of that as a build off. So I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to agree with all of that and build on it. And it's a piece of advice that I continuously remind myself of. And it's the simple fact that successful people, and we can plug in people with successful sailors, successful leaders, successful coaches, right? Successful people are not doing what everyone else cannot do. successful people are doing what everyone can do, but not everyone does.
Good.
And that is show up every day. That is put in the work. I find too many people are looking for shortcuts. And if I work with somebody to help them build their brand, this isn't a 2-week deal. This isn't a 1-month deal. This is a commitment to doing the small things every day. And from this conversation, it's really made me realize, I get a little goosebumps now. It's like this realization is that to have a coach is to help to remind you to do the things, to drill, to dribble, to do your leg workout. Like, I don't want to do my leg workout, coach. Drill it. You need to. And so I think we all can find success quicker by not trying to get it so fast and just focus on those skills and do them every single day. Do them over and over. Do them with passion. Do them with repetition. And if you don't have the discipline to do that yourself, which most of us don't, then accountability will help you to get there. But it's not some crazy hack. You're not going to buy a book and have your problem solved. And I think you look at it as a long term, and that's where we, as what we do, we help people grow, and that growth happens incrementally.
Thank you. Yeah, I think for me, I've learned a couple things actually, and one of them is Coach, you are a master storyteller. I mean, you really are. You can tell a story and really engage the audience. And sometimes I forget that we have to remember to bring the audience into our story to start with. And then Ryan, of course, I appreciate very much 313 Challenge. And every time I listen to somebody like Coach go through that, I learn more and more about my own message and how to articulate it. So appreciate you both very much. Thank you both for taking the time and the opportunity to come with Coffee with Lisa, and take care and be safe and well.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Enjoyed that. Thank you. That was awesome.
Bye-bye.